I lost every penny, I lost every contract, I lost everything, and I'd just gone from feeling at the top of the world to now being at the bottom. My name's Jamie Matthews, and in this video I'm going to be sharing with you my life story and how I've gone from being surrounded by death and destruction to creating a multi-7-figure business within the last 24 months. I aim to do this by sharing with you 3 different lives, all which I have lived. So for me, it all starts in Barrow-in-Furness, where I grew up in the northwest. It is a very small, out-of-the-way part of the country. Everybody knows everyone, and it is very easy to get comfortable and stuck there and have this feeling of never needing to leave. And similar to you watching this, I knew that I always wanted more and that I deserved more. I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, and I thought that I could escape and get away from the area. For me, this leads me on to story number 1. I grew up with my mum and my stepdad. For the purpose of the video, I'm going to call him a stepdad. However, he was just my mother's boyfriend. From birth up until the age of 11, I was mentally and physically abused by my stepdad and my mum. This left me feeling like I was a burden to the world. I remember on some occasions where I was beaten black and blue. I would say that I had fallen over, or he was tickling me and I tripped and hit my head on a door. Any excuse you can think of, I would give it. We lived in complete poverty. I had no money. We had to consistently scrounge for food and take out loans. On the way to school in the mornings, I used to steal a 45p chocolate muffin. Yeah, that's what I had to do, and that was considered my breakfast every day on the way to school. I remember calling the police on multiple occasions for my mum when I would see him pinning her down on the sofa and beating her or forcing her to take drugs. They were both heavy drinkers and alcoholics and drug takers. My mum's drink was, for some of you old timers watching, the 2-litre bottle of White Lightning cider, the big brown bottle. She would tan them like it was water. And I remember one day when I was 11, I escaped and I basically started to run away, and I had a little Motorola phone, and I called my dad and asked for help, my biological father. And my biological father was in and out of prison up until the age of 13. I phoned him on my Motorola. I'd asked him to come and help and collect me. He ended up stealing a double-decker bus to drive to come and collect me, then take me to my grandma's, which is who I then lived with for the remainder of my up until 21. What this did for me, and all this traumatic experience, was it allowed me to become very independent. It allowed me to grow up fast, and it allowed me to become very resourceful in times of stress and need, which is what I may not have had if I had a more cozy lifestyle. After this, I went and lived with my grandma. As I mentioned, my dad took me to my grandma's house. He was still in and out of prison. She was my world. She was essentially my mum, my dad, my grandma, granddad, auntie, uncle. She was everything to me. But I remember being around my mum's house one morning on a Friday, and it was just before school, and my mum was obviously drunk as per usual. This was the new normal for me. I remember her saying to me that she could hear noises under the door and under the furniture telling her to do bad things. And I remember her telling me that it was all because I was a problem child. That's the reason why my stepdad used to beat us both, and that's the reason why I was in the position that I was in. It was only later on in life where I realised that that's not true. I remember being stood there and she was drinking, and she went into the kitchen and she took her own life. I still went to school that same day. I brushed it off as if it was nothing. And I remember my friend at the time, Alex, saying to me when I told him what had happened and telling me to go home. And looking back, he was correct. I probably should have. But at the time, I remember thinking, why? I can't change it, so why should I dwell on something I can't change? And I lived by that motto for years and years and years, all the way up until my mid-20s, of if you can't change it, then don't dwell on it, and if you can change it, then change it and stop dwelling on it. I then lived with my grandma. It was just me and my grandma. My father was in and out of prison still. He officially came out when I was 13 years old, as I mentioned earlier. Now, he lived with his dad at the time, my granddad, who unfortunately just died of old age. But he tried his best to teach me right from wrong. And what I mean by right from wrong is he used to always say to me, do as I say, not as I do. And I'm sure plenty of people have heard that saying before. And he made some very bad choices for himself. He tried to always express to me the importance of not following in his steps. We lived in real bad poverty because he was still not taking correct action for himself. He was still taking money from my grandma and sometimes myself because I had a little job at the time, and we were struggling to eat, we were struggling to live. I was on food tokens in school, so I would get my meals for free. I got to the age of 17 and I remember we heard this big crash outside my house. We went outside, me and my grandma, and we realised that my father had crashed his brand new motorbike that he purchased the day before into a wall and died instantly. And we had to go and identify his body via the hospital and so on. And it turned out that he was speeding and on drugs. Now, I blamed myself for years for this, all the way up until my mid-20s, if not late 20s. Because the day before, when he purchased his motorbike, he said to me, Jamie, I've purchased a motorbike, do you want to come round and see it? At which I said no, because I was too busy with my girlfriend at the time, trying to get laid, like the idiot that I was, and I thought that that was more important. Then the next day, he felt the need to come and show me, because he was excited to show me his new motorbike, which then led to his death. I'm not saying that I'm to blame now, however, that's the way that I framed it in my mind. And if I wasn't so selfish, he would still be alive right now, and it wouldn't have led to what happened. And my grandma obviously lost her son that day, and I can't imagine what it feels like to lose your child. Everyone knows the child should not die before the parent. That's just nature. So I got to the point where I turned 18, I started taking payday loans thinking that it was just free money and this was going to help me and my grandma live. I got in a lot of debt. I purchased cars on finance that I couldn't afford that were then defaulted and taken off me. I didn't pay my loans and ruined my credit rating. I was a mess of a 18-year-old. I seen an ad in the local paper for television and film extra role for a film called Sightseers, directed by Ben Wheatley, Big Talk Productions at the time. And I got the role. I fell in love with the whole movie creation, the smoke, the cameras, the whole aura of the main actor walking onto set being respected and people looking at him as if it was Jesus. And I fell in love. The idea of acting and being someone else other than my own pathetic life was magic to me. I fell in love with these fantasy films and action movies where I just could portray someone else that wasn't myself. So I signed up to these casting websites and I wanted to apply for all of these roles, and I got lucky. I landed a role in a film called Underwater Realm, which was one of the first films in the UK to be filmed underwater. I then landed a role in Jack the Giant Killer, which was kind of a rip-off movie of Jack the Giant Slayer, and it was filmed by a company called Asylum Films, which is the same company who made Sharknado. So, as you can tell, it's already a very low-budget kind of spoof rip-off movie, but I loved it. I was getting paid tens of thousands of pounds over a very short space of time for something that I did not consider as work. I considered it as a pleasure, a love, a dream. I was getting to travel all over to film Iceland, Wales, America. I couldn't think that life would get any better. I was helping my grandma. I was taking my friends out to meals whenever I was back home. I completely lost every single penny. I became complacent, didn't renew my contract. I thought that now I'd done this work, it was going to just come to me opposed to me going to it. And I lost every penny, I lost every contract, I lost everything, and I'd just gone from feeling at the top of the world to now being at the bottom. This was all within a very short space of time. This was only over the course of 2 years, and I remember going home to my grandma having no money and us being in the same situation again and just thinking, I failed. Like, what do I do now? Because of the upbringing that I had, I wanted to feel something different and that my name wasn't tarnished with the upbringing that I had. I still had this horrible sense of, how do I escape? I really wanted to find a way for people to respect me and not be considered a failure. Which is then when I went on to join the Air Force. I originally applied as a personal trainer, however they ended up selling me on joining as an intelligence analyst. When you start your military career, you start off with doing phase 1 training or basic training. This is 14-man rooms, and this is probably the most fun that you'll ever have in your military career. In the military, you've got 2 routes. You can go down the route of every day you'll go to work, you can go home, you can spend your evenings with your friends on camp, or you can go to the gym, you can go out, party, drink. Number 2 is you go down the very secluded route of where you go to work, go back to your room on camp, spend it alone in your room and watch TV on your computer. That is your entire existence. And unfortunately, that was me. I was the latter. I would go to work, I would come back to my room, I would socialise with nobody, I'd go to the gym on occasion. Now, I really struggled with feeling lonely and like I didn't have any friends, even though I had friends back home who I played video games with for years, but it was still a big sense of loneliness. There's no one there with you. You've just sat there with your own thoughts to stew in your head every night. It got to a point where I was starting to have this sense of realisation that all my family are dead now other than my grandma. And when she's gone, I'm going to have no one. I'm going to essentially be homeless. I'm going to have nowhere to go. And in the military, one of the good things that you have, or one of the good things you look forward to, is the ability to go home at a weekend to see your friends and family. Now, that was already difficult for me due to where I was based. However, unfortunately, that actually happened. My grandma unfortunately died of cancer. I had nowhere to go. I had nothing in terms of friends on camp or a social network that I'd built up and any form of support system. All I did was bury myself in my video games, my computer, watching television, eating, and I was just getting depressed and more unhappy with my life and the situation that I was in, as I was still struggling financially, trying to pay off debt from my younger self. I got to a point where I was so overweight, 114 kilograms, and for someone who's 5'8" on a good day, I hated myself. And I remember sitting there on the edge of my bed looking in the mirror and just physically crying as I looked at myself. That may sound pathetic, but I did this so many times. I can't express how many times I looked at myself and just cried at how much I hated myself. And it was because I had this sense of shame that I had failed again. No matter what I was doing, I'm failing. I'm not a respectable person. And I got to a point where I just gave up. I wanted to kill myself. I took pills to overdose. I drove my car off a road. I hated every part of my life, and I was happy to let it go because I thought, well, if I do die, in reality, who's going to know I'm gone? No one's going to care. I've got no family to let down. So in reality, it would just be better if I did. And yeah, this was around 7 years into my military career. I had about 2 years to 18 months left of my career at this point, and I didn't know that my career was coming to that end at that point. So what I did is I thought I need to make some form of change. I went to the medical centre on camp. Now, I asked for help. They sent me to mental health therapy. It didn't work, in my opinion. I was diagnosed with depression, PTSD, anxiety, social anxiety. I was given antidepressants, which made me gain more weight. Now, I got to a point where I just thought I need to make some form of a change physically in my life. So I started to go back to the gym. I started to watch all of these YouTube videos on like how to get rich quick and money grabbing jobs where I wanted to change my financial situation and pay off all my debt and have some form of goal in life to progress to something. So I tried affiliate marketing, I tried drop shipping, I tried creating websites, I tried photography. I failed at every single one of them, and I'm glad I did, because without them failures I wouldn't have been able to learn what I'm good at, and I've learned a lot of lessons from them failures. I then stumbled across Samuel Leeds. And if there's anyone who watches this who's in the property game, I will happily give credit to Samuel Leeds where it is due. He has got a lot of people into property. Now, regardless of your opinion of his selling courses, the basics of what he was teaching at the time and what he still teaches now is the ability to create additional cash flow and create a life in property without having a lot of money to begin with, and there's plenty of ways to do it. And it was the bare basics of what he was teaching that got me hooked, and I thought, but that'd be amazing to own a property, own a physical building, as I'm now technically homeless, and owning a building whilst giving me money, paying off my debt. This was just another dream that I could purchase properties and physically own an asset whilst being able to generate some form of cash flow. And this could solve all of my problems. After consuming all of the free property content that I could get my hands on and business content, I then stumbled across Jamie York, who is very big in the property deal packaging and sourcing game. For anyone who doesn't know what deal packaging is, it is basically where you find someone who sells a house, someone who wants to buy a house, you marry the two up, you take a fee and a difference in the middle. And that there's obviously a lot more intricacies than that. However, that's just the bare basics. He sold me on paying for some education because I was at a position where I knew a lot about property but nothing about business. I then signed up to his property deal packaging course. It was all online. The course was all online. I then went to a networking event hosted by Jamie York, which is where I met my business partner, Abhishek. We were speaking for some time, we got to know each other a little bit, and he basically expressed that he had £20,000 in the bank account, but he didn't know anywhere in the country where he could put this money to work. Now, if any of you are watching this and you invest in property yourself, one of the biggest places that you can invest in the UK, and it's a cheap entry to market and it's still the cheapest to this day, is the Northwest and the Northeast. I sold Abhishek on, well, why don't we go 50-50 on a company? You put in the deposit, I'll pay for the refurb. I had no idea how I was going to pay for the refurb. I'll find the staff to do the refurbishment, or the subcontractors at the time. We'll make it work. So that's exactly what we did. Within the next, I think it was 2 weeks, we had set up a company, we'd put the money in to the account, we'd got an accountant to do all of the legal stuff that they need to do, which I still don't know to this day. I found a property on Rightmove, a 2-bedroom mid-terraced house for £53,000. The end value after a refinance was £115,000 with a £27,000 refurbishment. How did I fund the refurb? Good question. So what I did was, I had a friend in my core circle of friends who was big in construction. He did refurbishments and maintenance. I got him to agree that he would do the refurbishment on my property in his own time and of a weekend, and we were just paying for the cost of labour and materials. Now, I didn't know how I was going to pay for this, but anyway, we started to do the work. I was paying him out of my own personal money from the military, and I was leaving myself living, let's say, very below means. It got to a point where I thought, I can't sustain this anymore. I can't keep doing it this way. The amount of money that you can make in maintenance when you charge as a service in comparison to the cost of materials and labour is insane. It gave me a bit of an idea, and I thought, why don't I just start calling all the lettings agents in the area? The big ones, not the small, like local ones. I mean the biggest ones that have the biggest pools of properties. So that's what I did. I started calling all the major lettings agents. I said to them, a little script that I created in my head of, I have a fleet of vehicles. I didn't. I have a fleet of vehicles. You may have seen our vans around. They definitely hadn't, and you'll be surprised how many people had said, yeah, I've seen your vans. No, you haven't. I've got a fleet of vehicles. You may have seen the vans around. What are you currently getting for your maintenance? Because we cover all maintenance work. We can do it in the same time frame that you're currently getting it, and we can do it at a cheaper price. And I was shocked and surprised to see how it was a very common answer that a lot of the lettings agents gave, and that was, yeah, we're struggling to find good maintenance providers at the moment because they all have a very bad reputation for either not showing up on time, not doing the job, overcharging. And we thought, well, these are all easy things to solve. All you do is the reverse opposite. Arrive on time, don't overcharge. These are all common sense things to solve in my mind. So we landed our first contract with a big lettings agent who had around 2,000 properties up in the area. It got to a point where we started to get a little bit of a cash heavy point in the refurb, and we couldn't really fund it. And Brad had expressed to us, how do we go so we can make a big shot at this, take a big leap? We can make a lot of money if we do this full time. So I started to scour Facebook and look for a big refurbishment, and that we came across our first customer, which was a 4-bedroom 4-ensuite HMO conversion. And I just approached him and said, look, what's your current quotes? We can do it we can do it in the same time frame, but we can do it quicker and better. We gave him a quote. I think it was around £43,000 or £44,000 at the time, which he snapped our hand off and accepted. I said to him I wanted a 10% deposit up front as a retention, just as a gesture of goodwill, which we received. He agreed, and we then put that money onto a down payment on a business lease of a van. For a business lease, when you are uncreditworthy, you have to put a 9-month deposit to secure the vehicle, and then that's what we did. That was pretty much the whole 10% deposit or retention gone. Then Brad quit his job, started working for us full time. We had an uplift in maintenance because he was doing the maintenance throughout all the days to get as much money in as we could, whilst we were then doing the refurbishments on our property still on the weekend. We still hadn't started the new customer's refurb yet. We hit a bit of a point where we couldn't finish the amount of work on our property because it was a heavy refurb. We had to tank it, knock it back to brick. So what we did, we took a bit of a calculated risk. We used that money quickly to finish our property to get it out the way. Then, because we knew the value add of the property, we could refinance that property to pull all of the money back, and we use that money to then go back to the customer. Now, that's not the correct way to do it. That's not the correct business decision to make. However, we took the risk, it worked, and I wouldn't advise anyone to do it. That's not good money management. But we were early doors and we've learnt our lesson. Now, we then had refurb work to be done for our customer where we'd hired additional staff. We are now doing maintenance full time, and we thought we need to get bigger now. How do we get bigger? Because something you'll realise about me is I always want more. I do not care if I am a millionaire, hundreds of millions, billionaire. I will always want more or something else. I need something. That's just what gets me out of bed at night, the excitement. So I stumbled across Tyler Newman on Instagram, which you'll probably see me posting a lot about the 2-day mastermind. Yes, I knew a lot about property. Yes, I had some experience now in business. But I think I remember rightly, Kevin Hart did a video on this once where once you open one door, you'll realise that there's just another door with a new set of people playing a completely different game. And I attended the mastermind at Tyler's, and I realised that there's a whole new game to be played. The whole shift in mindset of the importance of thinking about a problem of who do I get this answer from, rather than how do I solve it. Or it's not if I want to do something, it's simply how I want to do it. And now I follow that every day in my life with every problem that I have. It is always, what's the problem? Where can I find the answer? I'll go look on Google. If I can't find it on Google, I'll go who knows the answer. If I don't know anyone who, I will go Google who will know that answer. That is it. I follow that process every time I sometimes changed the question but followed the same process. Once I'd finished the 2-day mastermind, I obviously went back to Abhishek, my business partner, and we discussed what we'd learned. We started to implement some of these new ideas of how we should run the business, how we should be framing it in our mind on seeking additional demand. We then took the leap and attended Tyler's 5-day mastermind out in Dubai, where me and my business partner went. And again, another door, another set of people. The guest speakers were playing a completely separate game, and it just opened our eyes to what was actually possible in a short space of time if you just change the mindset and the actions that you take or learn from the people's experience. And it showed me the importance of surrounding yourself with the right people. Now, we had guest speakers like Mike Thurston, Daniel Louisi, Lewis Alsop, Anthony Laville, Daniel Priestley. We went to the Abu Dhabi F1, which was a whole new experience for me. I'd never been in that type of environment where there was celebrities everywhere and money everywhere, and it was so eye-opening to see that there's an abundance of money around you that you're not actually aware of because you're not thinking about it. And I remember getting emotional when I was there and just thinking that I don't deserve to be here. I'm out of my depth. And I remember Tyler saying to me, make this the new normal. And now I make it a point to go out of my way to surround myself with people and be in the rooms which are way above me and out of my league. And it's to give myself that kick up the bum to keep going, essentially, and learn and be the guy asking questions. One of the main reasons why I'm filming this video now is because Daniel Priestley heard my life story and my ups and downs and where I'd come from and what I'd done and what I've managed to successfully achieve. I am almost selfish that I am not sharing my story and allowing some people to take some form of value from it, allowing it to progress their life and be some form of inspiration to them. And now that's something that he's highlighted to me, and it's given me a whole new appreciation for posting this type of content. And I'll be honest, it's a lack of, it's now removed that fear of being able to post, because now I know that if I'm affecting someone's life, why do I care about some of the people who may perceive me as someone negative, or they may not like what I'm doing on my content? That's fine. And he made it very clear that in reality, not a lot of people are watching my content, and not a lot of people will actually take a moment to stop on the content that I post. And the people who do, they will only take from it what they find valuable from themselves, and the people who don't care about your content will usually stop, if they do, and they will forget about you within 10 seconds once they've scrolled off and continued to the next post anyway. So for me, that kind of removed the fear. We've shown Daniel Priestley and Tyler and Alfred our numbers. Our vehicles that we have can generate anything between like £11,000 and £15,000 per month in revenue. The cost to run one maintenance van is around £3,000 to £3,500, including the insurances, fuel, and the cost of labour. And then materials can be anything between 10% and 40, sometimes 50%, based on if it's a material heavy month or a labour heavy month, depending on the jobs. Now, we highlighted all of this to them, and they turned around and said, you do know the gold mine that you've got. You need to think of it as, for you, one van, which equals X amount of revenue, and one person is one unit, and that's just one figure. And you need to now implement as many of these units as you can, which cover certain areas of the country. So, funnily enough, once we finished, we went home from Dubai. It was a very unhappy plane journey home, as I didn't want to leave. But when we got home, we started purchasing more vans and more vans. We started doing maintenance for even more lettings agents. We secured one of the biggest lettings agents, or we secured one of the biggest companies which owns multiple lettings agents within the UK, managing over 10,000 properties. Now, we secured that contract. Now, we're making so much more money just from the maintenance, it's allowed us to scale through the roof. On top of that, we're now slowly scaling our construction company at this point. This was not good enough, in my mind. I'm always wanting more, So I thought, okay, let me start attending all these networking events, property networking events. I want to start getting housing associations. I want to start getting these huge clients, mainly for maintenance was my main goal. However, what this led to is last Monday, we managed to secure our first contract with a company here in London who are hoping to turn their business into a housing association. They have a 8-figure contract with us where they aim to turn that into 350 properties over the next 5 years. They're leveraging this with bridging finance. So again, it's going to be a huge project where we're going to be able to turn over 8 figures. Now, do I know how to facilitate this project right now? No. We're only just starting. Get our first property with them is due to start late next week. Now, we don't really know how we're going to facilitate the huge amount of demand. For me, I'm an advocate of say yes and figure it out. Now, that could lead me down some problems, but that's when I act my best, and that's when I solve the problems, and I will lean on people within my network that I've now built by surrounding myself with the right people who will allow me to progress this company up until the next phase. I want to get this company where we can sell it for close to £1 billion. However, we're trying to copy the similar model to what Pimlico did here in London, where they operate within the M25 for gas and plumbing. We're going to try and do it for UK wide for maintenance and have hundreds of vans all over the UK. And then with the big game, hopefully, to be a global recognised brand for increasing the quality of living in lower income areas. Now, that's a huge aspiration and big boots I'm going to try and fill. But that's just the type of guy that I am. I want to put myself in a position where I struggle. I want to create problems for me and my business partner to solve, and I'm sure that we will. Now, to do that, I think I've mentioned the most important thing for us is to surround ourselves with the right type of people. I want anyone who's watching this to hopefully use me and my life story as some form of inspiration. I do not think of my life as someone who's had it much worse than others or much better. There is always someone worse off than me. And I just don't want people to sit there and think, just because you've had a rubbish life and a hard time, that you can now end up on an episode of Jeremy Kyle. You need to change that mindset to, how do I get out of the problem? What are the lessons that I've gained from this? For me, it is the fear of ending up like my parents and the hunger of success, and whether it be the approval of other people, whether it be the approval of myself. There's an element of me wanting to prove to my parents that I'm not a waste of space and a waste of time, and unfortunately this is a unfulfillable prophecy as they're no longer with me to even see my success. However, I'm going to be pushing for that for the rest of my life, and that will be something that I can see in myself at one day that I may be proud of. I'm my own worst enemy, but that is also what I will use to my strength to allow me to progress my company to things that I've never thought were possible. So please, if you are watching this, do take this as some form of inspiration. Your life has been hard. Your life may not have been hard, but it doesn't mean that you can't get yourself out of the gutter and whatever you're feeling right now, or the job that you don't want to be in, or the unemployment that you can't seem to get out of. Please use this as some form of inspiration to push yourself to a new level. Start a business. Go work under a business and get mentorship from someone with the aim to start your own business. Go and follow whatever your dream may be and think outside the box. Copy other people who have done it and just change the process a little bit that suits more for you. My life has had so many ups and downs that it's now become normal. I know that I'm going to have problems in the future, and that's fine. We're all going to have them problems. It's now how I just overcome them and my mindset shift to not if but how, not where but who. Stop thinking that I can do everything on my own. Start relying on the help of other people and not being afraid to ask for help. Work with people. mentor people. I will be mentoring people at some point, and I don't mean I'm going to try and stand in a room of 200 or 300 people where I sell a course. I mean I want to do actual mentorship on a personal one-to-one basis where I can change people's lives. I'm lucky enough to speak at the event with Tyler Newman's 2-day mastermind now. I am now a mentor. I never thought that I was going to be in this position, simply because I put it into the world, and I said to Tyler that I will one day be a guest speaker at your event, and I will prove to you my value, which I have now done. And I'm going to say this now on camera, and some people may think, why do you care about this, or why is this one of your goals? I will one day be on Diary of a CEO, sat there opposite Stephen, sharing my story. Now, he probably won't watch this, but I'm going to one day be on that show, and I'm going to show him this clip, and hopefully I'll make it there. But I'm putting that out in the world now, because I'm going to take every action that I can to make sure that I'm adding value to other people's lives and growing my own, where it puts me in this type of environment and opportunity to then be able to share my story to the masses and change other people's lives. So I hope you all have a wonderful day. I hope you all make the changes that I've hopefully inspired you to do within your life. Please make sure that you follow and subscribe. Head over to my Instagram. I'm going to be posting all of the ups and the downs and documenting mine and Abhishek's journey with Property Edge and all of the failures and successes, and hopefully this can teach you and show you that it's not all sunshine and rainbows, and this is just a part of life, and all of these bad things, they don't need to hinder you. So thank you guys, and have a wonderful day.